Looks like Washington's going to need a new head coach. Kalen DeBoer is on his way to Alabama.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. We write for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation Sports Illustrated. You can check out all our written work over there at si.com/college/Washington. We know this isn't your first watch or first listen of the day today, but thanks for being with us. We really do appreciate that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make everyone more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Lars Hanson, there is not a lot of positivity to be discussed right now. But off the top, Kalen DeBoer, Pete Thamel said that Kalen DeBoer will be taking the Alabama job and has informed Washington associates and officials that he will be doing so. It looks like there's a team meeting that was called for 1:30 p.m. So a lot to discuss. Let's start with the negativity, and then let's just kind of build on that and like maybe get to a point of positivity to help out some of the everydayers here. So I'm just gonna hand it off to you here.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about this situation, right? It's Kalen DeBoer didn't leave for Michigan State, didn't leave for Texas, didn't leave for USC, right? Which a lot of people thought, hey, Jen Cohen's the one that hired him, watch Lincoln Riley Bolt, and then she'll hire Kalen. That to me never made sense, especially with the way that Kalen had gone about this season. He had put himself into the upper echelon of college football coaches, top 5, top 10, depending on how you want to view it. And when the number one guy at the top of that totem pole retires, and 2 or 3 people saying, again, here's the ironic part about this. Washington did not have Kalen DeBoer as their number 1 choice or their number 2 choice. You could argue maybe not even the number 3 choice when they hired him in 2021. So the fact that Kalen DeBoer blessed this program for 2 years, right? Let's be real. Like, he took a 4-8 team, brought his quarterback who had never played more than 6 games in Indiana, brought his coaching staff from Fresno State, and just absolutely lit the Pacific Northwest on fire for 48 months. Great job.
Yeah.
But when this type of job comes open, you're almost negligent as a coach to not take it right now. I understand people will say, oh, well, he flames out in 3 years. He can't live up to the expectations. Fine. Kalen DeBoer is what? 49. 49. I was going to say, he's in that ballpark. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wanted to play off something you said from a source that I talked to this morning, where we were just having a general discussion about all these sorts of things. And this person said to me, it's Alabama. It's really hard to turn that down, especially as big of a challenge as it is to follow Nick Saban. That's something that some people would want to do. And people can, I'm not saying one thing or the other about that. I'm just saying that's kind of what that is. But I feel like there's one thing that we really need to talk about with all this. People are going to look for somebody to blame. And we're going to get into the whole coaching search. We're going to get into all that, but people are going to be looking for someone to blame through all this. And I think that most people are going to zero in on athletic director Troy Dannon. And I might be in the minority on this, and people, all the everydayers in the comments, you can tell me that I'm wrong. But I think that the person to blame is Jimmy Sexton, Kalen DeBoer's agent, not Troy Dannon. I'll give you a chance to respond, and then I'll make just some more reasoning.
I mean, I personally don't think there's anybody to blame. You could blame,
yeah.
Blame Nick.
If you want to point it to someone, that's kind of my point.
Yes, I mean, yes, Jimmy Sexton of the actual people to quote unquote blame would be the one because he represents all of the top 20 college football head coaches as an agent. So obviously, Jimmy Sexton had a pretty good idea by the end of, let's say, October, that Nick Saban was done. And the more that everything kind of piled on towards the end, the way Kirby interacted with him at the SEC championship was pretty clear. Kirby took his visor off, kind of had like the and it's gonna be crazy. We're never gonna shake hands after a game or before a game again. Like you're actually done. And that was during the season, right? Granted, it was towards the end of the season, but I think it became pretty clear. And somebody else mentioned this. I don't know when DeBoer changed agents, but it had to be within the last 2 or 3 months because
it definitely was.
I know that his other agent was still, kind of doing things. I forgot what his name is off the top of my head, but I know that he was working in September and October. So it would have had to have been November, December, which again, and here's the thing, if you're Kalen DeBoer, it is your duty to your family and yourself to get the most money that you can, right? There's no difference here with anybody else. If you go into your boss and say, hey boss, I want a raise. And it's like, well, we can try and do 6 or 7. It's like, okay, well, that company down the street is willing to offer me 12.
But that's
not
necessarily my point.
But it's not money. It's more or less like, hey, like this guy is now opening these doors for me that maybe my other agent couldn't. And I think again, I don't think it's nefarious on Jimmy Sexton's part, though.
I'm not saying that
to push back, right? Because like it's Washington just got the short end of the stick here. You know what? I'm gonna be a real pain in the side to Washington fans right now. Kalen DeBoer just did to Washington, but Washington did to Oregon State and Washington State.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's different, but it's the same feeling where it's like, hey, look, we had to do what we had to do. Kalen DeBoer had to do what he had to do. Jimmy Sexton had to do what he had to do. So this is kind of where we land. This
is more my point. Where Ross Dellinger put it out there, there was a contract offer on the table. That's why I'm saying that Ross Dellinger said there has been a contract offer on the table. Who knows for how long? I've heard a variety of things from a couple different people that I've talked to on length, on dollars. So I'm not going to say, yes, this is exactly what it was, but that there was a significant contract offer that was on the table, whatever it might have been. I know what Dellinger said, that it was top 10 college football kind of money, would have more than doubled his current salary. So I feel safe that it was saying over $9 million, right? Whatever that was. But he was told, let's hold off because you'll be surprised at what kind of job might come open this offseason. And that's exactly what happened here, right? So you can say whatever you will about that, but that's where you kind of look at this. And I'm not saying like, oh, well, you can't compete with Alabama. You can't compete with them, where a lot of people are going to want to do that. That's still going to be a job that some people are going to want that challenge. And that's more my point when you get there. And there are going to be a lot of, and we're going to get into a lot of those names and this is where I'm going to be really interested in what Troy Dannon is capable of doing. What are those first couple of calls? What are those calls going to look like? Is it going to be a Jedd Fisch? Is it going to be a Pete Carroll? I'm firmly on that train where I think that could happen. I'll get into some reasoning. But is it going to be like a Lance Leipold at Kansas? Is it going to be Glenn Schumann, the defensive coordinator at Georgia? I think that'd be a really interesting call, where there are a whole lot of different scenarios and ways that this could be taken. I'm curious to see how all of that is going to play out over the next. I don't think this is going to take longer than a week. Whatever the decision is, I don't think it's going to take longer than a week.
Well, it can't take longer than a week because now you have the 30-day period for players to enter the portal. And yes, you're already losing guys to the NFL, which we all knew was going to happen. But now you don't want to lose Austin Mack. You don't want to lose Rashid Williams. You don't want to lose
Noah Carter,
Parker Brailsford. Like, imagine the SEC schools. Imagine Alabama being like, "Hey, Parker, want to take a visit?" Right. Like, and here's the thing: would you blame him?
No.
So that's where it's a tough situation. And here's what I do want to say about Kalen from a respect standpoint. Had he signed that new contract and then left, that almost makes it worse. So at least at least to his credit, I know this sucks, but to his credit, to a man, he didn't say, "Hey, I'm staying. Hey, I'm staying. Hey, I just signed my new contract. Hey, stop asking me about it." It was kind of the elephant in the room, like, "Hey, why is it not done? Why is it not done?" We all were waiting for the other shoe to fall, and the other shoe happened to be Nick Saban bowing out of the sport, which nobody knew was coming.
Exactly, where we thought it was going to be, oh, hey, it's going to be like we're waiting until the end of the season, all those, and then, oh, wait, it's Nick. You're right, it's Nick Saban. So
and we thought about maybe Harbaugh as well. Now it turns out we were kind of close.
So we've got so much more to say, but we'll be right back. And we're going to send a message to our good friends over at FanDuel because the NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still plenty of time to get on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. And, one thing, I'd be really curious to check out some of those lines on, and maybe just start slamming all the unders in that Kansas City game taking place tomorrow. Just whatever the lines are, I would slam all those unders with the weather going on over there. So, Lars, we've got so many different ways to take this. This is a bit of like an emergency pod style for us, where there's a lot to talk about, but let's talk. I think we should go here. Let's talk about Ryan Grubb, where as of this moment, as we kind of put our phones down on do not disturb so we can just kind of focus on this a little bit. And we don't know what the coaching staff is going to look like. We don't know what the roster is going to look like. I know I just saw something that Mish Powell has officially entered the transfer portal. Not going to be surprised if other players follow. But what we need to discuss is what the coaching staff is going to look like and who Kalen DeBoer might take with him. So obviously the number one name is going to be Ryan Grubb, where he could stick around and potentially be, considered for the head coaching job. But that opens the doors to, is that going to be Jimmy Lake 2.0? Well, that's not what we're saying, but there are definitely people out there who are thinking it. So there are a whole lot of ways to discuss this.
Yeah, I mean, even former coach, coaches would tell you they know, whether they were here or not, they know about the situation with Jimmy Lake. So they understand, hey, like, even if I want to stick around, I understand that people are going to have that reaction. I think there's two ways to kind of look at this. Either you go for the immediate – there's two ways to go about this. Do what Chris Peterson did when he abruptly bowed out of the sport kind of after the 21 season – after the 19 season. Right before COVID. So the man read the room perfectly. Brilliant guy. But Chris Peterson does not get enough credit for bowing out right before COVID. Like the level of like vision that man had, immaculate.
Hey, genius.
So, with that being said,
you should give me the lottery numbers.
With that right. With that being said, it was Jen Cohen 48 hours later announcing, hey, we are Chris Peterson is resigning, Jimmy Lake is promoted. Boom, just boom, boom. Right. I do not think it's going to be the case now. That same case with, hey, Kalen DeBoer is left to take the job. Ryan Grubb promoted, right? Like, today or tomorrow, we're not going to see that press release come out from UW. I would be very surprised at that, at least, because if that were the case, Kalen would have said that. I feel like, hey, I'm probably considering this job. Grubb will take over. We'll kind of amicably be clear that. Also, when you're looking at Alabama's roster and schedule, roster. There's no reason why Kalen doesn't bring Ryan Grubb, so Kalen can still be the CEO. Ryan Grubb now has Julian Sand and Jalen Milroe to work with, so you've either got a 5-star freshman or a athletic quarterback to build from, and probably bring in a transfer portal guy. Maybe Will Rogers, because you can transfer twice, so Will Rogers can easily transfer to Alabama without penalty. So there's plenty of things at play here, and I don't think you – I like Ryan Grubb. We both like Ryan Grubb, but I don't think you want to go with an internal hire, even though that would kind of, bridge the gap, so to speak. That's the same logic that was used with Jimmy, right? Where, hey, everybody likes him, everybody this and that. And then 2 years later, nobody liked him. So I'm not saying that Ryan Grubb will fall into that same trap, right? But I just think from a health program standpoint, it would be better to bring in a Jedd Fisch or a Lance Leipold or somebody else with head coaching experience who has been a head coach at multiple stops that can attract talent. Because it's not that Ryan Grubb can't attract talent, but especially when you're replacing a coach that just went to a national championship, you need to be able to you can't have a 6-6 season next year. So Jedd Fisch or any established head coach will at least get you to 8-5 or 9-3, right? That's kind of the goal, right?
Somewhere in that range.
The other thing, I know it's not going to be popular with fans, really some fans, but when you're taking a coach from, let's say you take Jedd Fisch from Arizona. Let's just kind of run with this for a second. You don't think he's bringing Terratona McMillan? You don't think he might bring in Noah Pepita? There are plenty of guys, and also Austin Mack being like, hey, I wouldn't mind playing for Jedd Fisch.
Right, like this. Oh, this guy knows how to develop a quarterback. Yeah,
right. So there's a way to keep the roster somewhat intact. You're going to lose defensive guys because this past staff, but I don't know. The secondary especially was, to me, a little questionable.
So this kind of leads perfectly into my Pete Carroll rant, where I'm not saying that is there a zero chance of this happening? I wouldn't say that. I would put it at like 1 to 2% if we're being real. But here's my point, where yeah, he's 72. It is what it is. He clearly still wants to coach. Like, listen to his presser. He was kind of forced out of that job with the Seahawks. He knows how to win at the college level. He knows he's not going to be around very long. So he knows what kind of, and he's won at the college level before. So he knows what kind of staff it takes to be put in place to, reach a high level of success in college football. And on top of that, I'm sure that just with the energy and everything that guy exudes, that he could be an elite recruiter rather quickly. Is it going to happen? Again, probably not. But I think that that's a conversation that it should be thrown out into the ether, like it or not.
I think we got to go back to the live show yesterday or the day before, because didn't I also suggest Pete Carroll and saying he was
I feel like
young?
you did, yeah. I just want to make sure we built on it.
No, because that's the thing is like. But here's the thing: to your point about him maybe being a 3 to 4 year coach at the college level. Let's just say, like, if he were to go to Washington, he's not going to be there for more than 5 years. Granted, Kalen was here for 2, so we take what you can get. But I don't know. To me, I mean, why not just run back Chris Peterson, right? Like,
sure. And I don't think that's going to happen either.
Right. Again, that crossed my mind after Jimmy left. It has not crossed my mind once since Kalen left, or Kalen has been considering leaving, right? Obviously, Kalen just left 30 minutes. Well, he's still here technically, but on the way, if you will. But the point being that, like, Chris Peterson would obviously stabilize the program, but it's like, do you want to go down the who was the old Wisconsin coach, Barry Alvarez, where Barry Alvarez would be professor emeritus of the football program, and whenever they fired a coach or got rid or made a coaching change, he would kind of come back and stabilize the program. I'm not sure you really want to do that. Even Boise State hasn't brought him back. So I don't think I'm not saying you don't want an older coach. You can get an older coach. That's fine.
Yeah, that's not the thing.
I just think more or less like maybe you could get him as like an advisor, like a GM, maybe like where, hey,
sure.
Fill Courtney Morgan's role, where like all you got to do is kind of just be the brain trust, and you don't actually have to coach. You can be around the players, be a support person. Would Pete Carroll want to do that? I don't think so. So,
right.
There's, you're right to at least bring up the potential of it, because he is a free agent, but it's almost like bringing up Jimbo Fisher, right? Like in a way where it's like, do you want Jimbo? He's free, no buyout, big time SEC coach. Like, so
we're gonna have to take a quick break here real fast in just a second, but first I want to read off this list that Pete Thamel put together rather quickly. Because this is a tweet he put out 12:16 p.m. It's a little over a half hour ago. He says Washington will be an attractive job. Officials there for now won't have any college market competition. It says quick list in no order: Lance Leipold, Jedd Fisch, Matt Campbell, Ryan Grubb, Barry Odom, Chris Kleiman, Kyle Whittingham, Dave Clawson, Kalani Sitake. So interesting list of candidates there. And we're going to get to a little bit more of that, but we got to take one more break. And we're going to send a message to our good friends over at Gametime. Because shout out to Gametime, man. When I was down in Houston, it was really easy to get some tickets on there to go watch the Houston Rockets. I had a lot of fun doing that. You shouldn't have to worry about when you're buying tickets to your next big event. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Some of the coolest things about Gametime is the last-minute tickets, the flash deals, the zone deals. When I went to the Rockets game, I just kept watching the price, and it kept dropping a little bit, and I bought my tickets like an hour before the game started. It was great. I love that. So shout out to Gametime for that. You can get a view from every single seat in the venue. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view, run your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, let's jump back into this, because let's talk about the reality of moving forward into the position. One name that I know Dave Softy Mahler, our colleague, works over at 93.3 KJR, put out there. That would be an interesting hire where, doesn't necessarily have a lot of experience in the role, but somebody who I know you and I both have a great relationship with and are very familiar with would be wide receivers coach Jamarcus Shepard, where I don't necessarily know if that would be the hire, but I feel like him and Ryan Grubb are the two guys right now where out of just all the, and this is, going outside of a Ron McKeefrey, who I think would be a really great get to be able to keep him around if possible or anything like that, where those are the two guys that are on the, just as assistant coaches right now that you'd say, yes, these are the two guys we want to make sure we keep.
Oh, without question. I mean, I think Jamarcus is getting close to being worthy of a head coaching position. The only thing is, do you want to bet a not blue blood Power 5, but a significant Power 5 going to the Big Ten program on a first-time head coach? I don't think you want to do that, because especially after coming off a national championship run, I mean, Troy Dannon has to hit a home run with this hire, because not only what you're coming off of, but then what the sport is building towards. And if you're in the Big Ten and you flounder to 6-6 for the next 2 or 3 years, all that allure, all that good cachet that Kalen DeBoer built up at Washington for 2 years just got wasted. And that's not on Kalen DeBoer for wasting it. He built it up and parlayed that success into another job. That's no different than anybody else in the business world or just life in general. So now it's on Troy Dannon to figure out, hey, these are some good pieces. But at the same point, Jamarcus Shepard was known, right, throughout the country, but he really didn't become elevated until Washington. He was good at Western Kentucky. He was good at Purdue. He was good at a few stops. But he really became that, wow, look at this dude out here. He became Brian Hartline, basically under Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb. So if I'm him, I could easily just as well say, hey, why not let me go to Alabama and recruit all the 5 stars that I want. And then when the time is right, I become a head coach and go off of Kalen DeBoer's Alabama tree. Same with Ryan Grubb, where, hey, I could become the head coach at Washington. I could roll with Austin Mack and Will Rogers, but will I be able to retain the rest of the coaches and then hire a defensive staff? I think that to me is kind of the key. And honestly, if Kalen had hired maybe a few different pieces on defense, maybe they win a national championship. And, the story is different. I'm not saying that the defense was the reason they lost the game, because despite giving up 300 some odd yards, the offense couldn't move the ball. So there's kind of pros and cons of which side of the ball you want to focus on. I do think they want an offensive coach. I know you mentioned Georgia's defensive coordinator. Pete Carroll also is a defensive mind who's had some fantastic offenses, but they weren't necessarily by fault of his. So that's why I would go for Lance Leipold at Kansas. Small buyout. Somebody mentioned Willie Fritz to me at Houston. Go check his buyout. He just got hired. That's not happening.
Yeah, that's not. Another name I saw was Rhett Lashley at SMU, where I thought that would be an interesting one. But I feel, and this is no disrespect to Rhett Lashley, I feel like Washington can dream a little bit bigger, because there is a lot to build on with this program, but you have to capitalize on that right now. So you need somebody, and that's that kind of plays into my Pete Carroll thing, but it goes beyond that, right? Let's say it's Jedd Fisch, where that would be an interesting one there. So it needs to be somebody who can find a way to capitalize on all this publicity, because what we've seen from what Kalen DeBoer has done here is that Washington has the opportunity to be, and we knew this to be true already, but Washington can be one of the truly elite jobs in college football. So the question is, who is going to want to be able to continue that success? Because you and I feel that Troy Dannon understands that, but it's just the question is, who's going to be able to close that deal and get it done?
Where do we stand on Cliff Kingsbury?
No.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Okay, just because again, that's in that Lashley, the offensive coordinator, the sexy hire that actually is going to be more Steve Sarkisian 2013, where you get 7, 8, maybe 9 wins, and you're on the cover of GQ, but you're not necessarily winning as many games as the girl dad that just preceded you. So, I mean, Kalen DeBoer took this program above Chris Peterson. So now you have to aim higher than Chris Peterson. And that's kind of where I'm at with these names, where I know they don't sound like, again, Jedd Fisch is obviously the one name that's the safe head coach, 10-win, that's kind of your easy marquee A1 coach. But Lance Leipold, I know his record at Kansas hasn't been great, but the work that he put in the Buffalo, also building Kansas back up from the trash that it was.
Getting Kansas to where it is a very impressive feat.
And that's why I just want to say that, because when Washington fans go and look up some of these names that we're mentioning, especially the ones that we're mentioning so heavily in Leipold and Fisch, you're going to see the record, and especially the losing record at Kansas, and think, I don't know, why do we want a loser from Kansas to come take over for a winner at Kalen DeBoer, Washington? As somebody who is pessimistic about the DeBoer hire in general, being a one-time Power 5 offensive coordinator, no other Power 5 experience, sometimes you just bet on the person. And I think that's what you would do with Lance Leipold. And I think knowing that he's worked the ground at Buffalo, worked the smaller jobs, he's not a coach like, Mel Tucker that went from Georgia to Bama to, working as an assistant for all those years. Hey, he's a longtime assistant. It's like, yeah, there's a reason those guys are longtime assistants. You want a coach who has had to build his way up, like Chris Peterson and Kalen DeBoer. Jamie Caldwell at Liberty is one that I haven't seen mentioned. I threw his name out there on a tweet that I put out there after I said Lance Leipold, Jedd Fisch, Jamie Caldwell, because again, they all three share that similar winning background. They're offensive minds. They're head coaches that in some cases been multiple time head coaches, and they've won at multiple levels. So to me, that's what you're looking for, and that's what you're trying to replace in Kalen DeBoer.
Right. So one of the big things that we need to talk about, because it's something that you and I discussed a lot throughout the year, was DeBoer and this whole staff's ability to evaluate talent and everything that they did to be where it didn't necessarily show in the recruiting rankings, but that's a big step that still needs to be taken, where it's finding a way to close on top 20, top 15, top 10 classes, which DeBoer and his staff couldn't do. So that's another big question of, all right, who's going to come in and be able to elevate the recruiting, and how are they going to get that done? Because you and I both like what Washington is able to do from an NIL perspective, what Montlake Futures does, everything that goes on, despite kind of what it looks like, everything seems like a very positive avenue on that front. But and because I see a lot of people in the comments saying you guys are making excuses for Troy Dannon, where I don't know if that's like maybe a little bit, but now the question turns to, this is still why he was brought here. He was brought here to elevate the football program. Where is this a failure? Absolutely. There's no question about that. But there were so many other factors at play here where there are still questions that he can answer by going out and making a big time hire and affirming his commitment to the football program by saying, all right, this is what we're going to do. Here's like, yeah, this is a huge loss. This sucks. This stings. Here's how we can recover from that. There are still a lot of opportunities to fix that and to make that right. And I'm just very curious to see what he does with that opportunity.
Right. Exactly. It's like, you could also just say Jen Cohen is as much at fault for not having a higher buyout. Again, I don't think the buyout was ever going to be an issue. Like,
the buyout was not the issue here. Yeah.
Unless you put the buyout at like 70 million, which was never going to happen. Like, that
right.
Short of those high marks. But even still, I think, again, Troy Dannon has been now handed a tough task. Let's see if he can validate his hire. Now, if he hires, I don't know, insert random offensive coordinator with a rising star, this wouldn't be a bad hire right now, but it's like your fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh option. It's Brendan Marion, the UNLV offensive coordinator, where it's like, young guy, intriguing, right? Intriguing. But if you have to settle for that, that's the problem with Troy. That's why I say that, where it's like not a shot at Brendan Marion, because Brendan Marion is a fantastic coach and a fantastic rising assistant in college football. But Ryan Grubb would be a better hire than that, right? Because at least it's internal. You know what you would get, at least from an offensive perspective. But either one of those hires, and again, you know where I stand with Ryan Grubb. Ryan Grubb, good man, great man, all that, good family man, all that. But I think he would be better suited to follow Kalen and go to Alabama, just blow the whole thing up, And here's the thing: for as good as this recruiting class was, technically, it's not like DeBoer, signed 2 or 3 marquee classes, and now you're risking losing all those players. Yeah, you've got some decent pieces, but there's no reason in this day and age with the transfer portal that you can't rebuild that roster pretty quickly.
And this is still the biggest question, where you want to make sure this gets done quickly, because it's no secret that players are going to want to hit the portal rather quickly. There's still going to be a lot of that. But getting somebody in the building fast, like they kind of did with Kalen DeBoer when he was hired a couple of years ago, and was able to retain a majority of the roster, where we didn't see a lot of big name guys or guys that went on to have a big impact anywhere else hit the portal after Jimmy Lake left. And as bad as this situation is, the way the roster and the way the locker room looked after Jimmy left was a lot worse. So getting somebody in the door now with, like you talked about, Parker Brailsford, another guy that, like we could talk about just a few like up and coming guys. Like I want to talk about Lance Holtzclaw, right? Javon Parker would be an interesting one. Jeremy Bernard, Denzel Boston, Jeremiah Hunter, Will Rogers. Like the list goes on and on of really interesting players that you want to make sure are on this roster. You need to make sure that somebody is in place quickly to get this done. And I feel like even a week is being generous with this.
It shouldn't take a week. And here's what I will say to push back on Troy. Troy should have known this was coming. The fact that DeBoer waited this long, if Troy was that inept to not think, oh, hey, there's nobody else that's going to poach him. Oh, wow, Alabama all of a sudden? Really? It's like, bro, he was putting off that contract extension for one clear reason. You should tell me you don't have a couple of names already in the chamber to figure it out.
And it kind of seems like they did.
Exactly.
Just from the things that have come out in the last hour or so.
Right. And so that's why I would be surprised by if next Tuesday they don't have a coach.
Sure. I think that's
fair. Because you have 30 days to keep the players now from the time DeBoer accepts the job, which I believe will be today, till 30 days from now. So until February 12th, they can enter the portal at will. So in order to cut that off, you want to be able to have as much time to lay your foundation, meet the players, understand who you want to keep, who you don't want to keep. So that's why before next Tuesday or Wednesday, they have to have that hire in place.
Right. And, we're going to get all there because there's going to be so much more to talk about. We're going to wrap this show up for today. Thank you to all the Everydayers for tuning in. We know this is kind of a bummer. Like Lars and I, we both really like Kalen. We really like this entire staff. So it really, really is a bummer for us. But for everything that will be happening over the coming days, the coming weeks, coming months, make sure you just stay locked in with us right here on Locked On Huskies, because there's going to be so much to talk about. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all of the Everydayers out there for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. And to keep updated with everything, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel. Yep. I, as you know now, there's going to be a lot to update with all this going on. So make sure you subscribe, leave the like button on the video, leave us a comment down below with some of your preferences for the next coaching hire. And, until we talk to you next time, whatever that might be, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, just make sure you follow us on Twitter, and we will keep you updated on everything that's coming next. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time.